Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you a bit about Battlefront 2. Originally was never going to buy this because of the whole loot box fiasco, but they decided very quickly, for obvious reasons, that they wanted to get rid of the whole loot box thing and just make the game more closer to its originals, as in the original Battlefront, Battlefront 2, and Star Wars Battlefront, which is an interesting way to go about things, especially considering this is EA we're talking about, the money-grubbing bastards. But then they also released a bunch of other updates to the game, and every time that I hear about Battlefront 2 online, I always hear someone say, "Oh, they fixed it, it's great now, it's an amazing game." And I figured I wanted to see how true that was for myself, mainly because, well, you know, it's Star Wars. Despite how badly the sequel trilogy sucked ass, I'm always a fan of Star Wars. And considering that this game seems to be pretty heavily biased towards the prequel and original trilogies, not so much the sequel stuff, you know, that's enough to get me interested, I suppose. And I was honestly interested to see how the game would adapt to not having microtransactions, because when you convert a game from one to the other, it definitely seems like there'd be a lot of effort that would need to go into it, and they need to change a lot of the gameplay systems, or at least a lot of the unlocking systems. So, I also played the original Battlefront back when it was a beta trial on the PlayStation, like way back when it was first, way back when that happened. And my main problem with that game was that it was really shallow. Like, intensely shallow. There were so many things about that game that were neat, but it just didn't have any staying power because it felt the same from second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour. And unfortunately, that's the main problem with Battlefront 2 as it stands. It just doesn't have that much going for it. It's just not a very in-depth shooter. The main thing that's going to be pulling you away from attacking enemies with relatively similar blasters for 90% of the game are your abilities. And your abilities are always pretty simple. Put up a shield, give yourself extra health, throw out a grenade, or activate some sort of Fury-style ability that lets you shoot more often, or something along the lines of, say, a rocket launcher that'll do an immense amount of damage. All your abilities have to recharge after you use them. They're all fairly simple to understand. Although, abilities on heroes are often a bit weird to figure out. Although, there is actually an ability to just press a button and see what your abilities are in the middle of a spawn. But for whatever reason, the game didn't tell me this. I didn't actually go through the tutorial, but if I'm being honest, I didn't even know a tutorial existed until I actually went digging around in the single-player menu. Because the menus in this game are also a bit trash. But yes, as a result, 90% of the game just results in you firing away at enemies, whether it be short distance or long distance. And the shooting, well, it's because they use blasters all the time. That's kind of the main problem. Because blasters are an inherently uninteresting weapon. So you've basically got laser guns that almost always shoot straight, and basically just feel the same no matter what you do. So you have to find a way to play around with blasters while also not... You have to find a way to play around with blasters while also not getting in the way of established Star Wars canon. It also feels a bit weird that the Rebel Alliance also shoots blue bolts, as well as... Basically, they're just trying to diversify fire between the factions, but I'm willing to forgive that for gameplay purposes. What I'm not willing to forgive is just how similar all the weapons feel anyway. I mean, even with the heavy having basically a chain gun, it just feels like the same sort of gun you regularly get with the foot troops, just a little bit faster and a little less accurate. And that's just kind of the problem across all of them. They change in accuracy and damage, but they don't really feel different from character to character to use. And it just results in me getting a little bit bored of the shooting as it goes along. And it basically means you have to rely on your abilities. And it depends on the character, honestly. And by the character, I mean whether or not you've got the regular foot troops, you've got the special troops that you need to spend battle points to get, or the heroes that you need to spend a lot of battle points to get. And in a few situations, this actually works fine, and I'm actually kind of impressed with it. Like, for example, the droidicas, which have become one of my favorites, because it's so, like, they have a very clearly defined role that they can go for, right? They're relatively short to medium range distance, just consistent attackers. They need to be laying down fire as much as humanly possible. And they're also quite weak, so they basically, I mean, they do have an energy shield that lets them take a lot of damage, but once that shield is gone, they take a lot of damage from everything, so you basically just need to get them out of the way as soon as their shield has gone down. Which means they're quite guerrilla. You need to send them in and out of fights, and when they're in fights, you need to just be laying down as much fire as humanly possible. It sets something that they need to do, right? It gives them something that they are capable of doing and that they should be doing at all possible times. The base classes don't really have this sort of thing going for them. And just let me give you an example. The base assault troop gets a simple blaster rifle that just continuously shoots, right? So it's just constantly firing away until it needs to reload, obviously, and that whole mechanic is weird to me. I appreciate the idea of the active reload and the fact that it's so much slower than doing your doing a reload before the heat bar fills up, and you have the ability to earn yourself infinite fire for a while. That's a neat idea, but it just seems weird in the context of Star Wars to have reloads in this way. Kind of feels like it was more meant to appeal to the whole, what's it called? Kind of feels like it was meant to appeal to bloody modern day shooter fans, but whatever. But yeah, regular assault troop has a blaster fire that just fires normally, right? Nothing particularly wrong with that. But once you move up to the first weapon that you can unlock with that character, you get a 3-shot burst rifle, which is incredibly accurate even over long distance. Minus the recoil climb, of course, which again feels really freaking weird in the spirit of Star Wars, but we'll just leave that one alone for now. But yeah, once you've got this rifle, you can start upgrading it via basically using it. And once you have upgraded it a bit, you get access to dual zoom, which basically gives it the same amount of range as the sniper rifle class, the infiltrator. And it meant that I found using the assault class for longer range combat more effective than using the infiltrator. And there's a double problem with this as well, because there are classes that can get better and worse at that sort of thing. Like you've got the heavy class, which can do better at short range engagements than most other classes. But then you've got the assault, which can pull out a shotgun, which can absolutely wipe the floor with a lot of enemy troops, right? There's a lot of this weird crossover going on, which means everybody is alright at everything for the most part. I mean, for the specialist, you're not going to want to stick around in short range for too long because the ability that lets you stick around in short range isn't particularly effective, and there are other like little things like that. But as a result, you don't really feel like that anyone is particularly specialized in the base classes. And the base classes are who you're going to be using the most, at least in the early parts of the game, because you need a lot of battle points in order to start actively using your special troops, which are more specialized and therefore feel like they have more of a gameplay purpose. So as a result, all the base classes just feel a bit whiffy. Like they don't really have any particular use outside of just, you know, being there for the most part. And I can kind of understand why they went for this, because in games like this, having a really specialized class and then having them in a position where they can't really do anything is one of the most frustrating things about it. But at the same time, I think they went too far with making everyone just a little bit too good in every situation. Which means that Assault, Heavy, and Specialist at the very least feel like they're not really particularly like good at what they feel like they're meant to do. and it just makes it kind of boring because honestly, I don't know what sort of situation I'm going to end up in when I spawn with a certain base troop, which means I might as well just like throw one out at random. Obviously, you can go in with like a squad of 4 and try and communicate these sorts of things, but I've mainly been playing this alone, and trust me, these squads do not communicate whatsoever. I'm not even sure if this game has voice chat, if I'm being honest with you, which seems weird, but okay. You do have the ability to say to your troops, like, hey, I'm going to go and start capturing this point, but whether or not they'll follow you is another story entirely, which means I just kind of stopped doing it after a couple of hours, right? So yeah, as a result, it's not very satisfying playing the base classes. It doesn't really help that you have to put in a lot of effort to upgrade them. You see, what they replaced the microtransactions in this with is good old-fashioned grinding, which is not great, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It really would have been better just to like give us all of the abilities out in the open, because a lot of them are basically just passives. Even the ones that actively replace like certain abilities don't really change the deployment of those abilities as far as I've found, at least not in a strategic way anyway. Like, you can get different kinds of grenades, for example, but at the same time, that's always going to replace a grenade. You can't give yourself, like, 3 different grenades. You're always going to have a grenade, a extra passive ability that'll be more meant to defend you, and then your rage ability or whatever. So, at least in the earlier levels anyway. So you just find yourself slowly working away at certain troopers and then using them to get abilities. And these abilities aren't nothing. We're talking about things like your health regenerates faster, you do more damage, you mark people for damage. Just think that they're obvious advantages, basically, which means if you're using one particular kind of troop, you're not going to want to swap to another different kind of troop. And this really isn't effective for characters like the Officer, who are more meant to buff your dudes as you go along. So, it's a weird little situation where you find yourself using one particular dude a lot, and you just can't, you just can't justify using them because you've already got upgrade cards with decent abilities applied to your assault, so you think to yourself, okay, there's no real point in me taking the specialist out because I've leveled up the assault enough. Which means that you're just kind of encouraged into sticking with one particular character because they've got all the bonuses. And you don't want to go up against someone who's got full bonuses when you don't, because having them have like a grenades go like 30% further. They get a ton of health back every time they hit you, which basically turns them into a massive tank. And just unique little abilities like that fully upgraded means that, of course, everyone who comes in after you has an advantage. It's not a massive advantage, but in a game like this, where every shot counts, basically, it means that those advantages kind of stick around. And you can kind of tell who has like a good set of abilities on their character, because they tend to get a lot of points immediately, and then they get to immediately go for the hero characters. Because trying to get a hero character in a multiplayer match of this is honestly frustrating, because every single time I've felt like I've had, like, you know, enough points to get one of those hero characters, they're always taken up. And I've seen multiple situations where I've waited around on the hero screen just to see how quickly the heroes get taken, and they will get taken basically immediately. So you end up in a position where there's just a ton of people just waiting for the, there's a ton of people just waiting to get their hands on a hero character, which basically means you have to do the same thing. You have to hover over a hero character or a villain character, take your pick, but they're called heroes in-game, and just hammer away at the X button, hoping that you'll get them before somebody else does. And I know that this is a thing, because I've had to do it multiple times. Like, there is one situation in this video where I got there just by luck, and that's the only time that's happened, and I've been playing this for several hours at this point. Basically, you just kind of have to camp the heroes in order to actually use them, which is honestly frustrating, because you might get ridiculous lives. Like, that life that you saw on screen there, where I got like 8,000 points in one go is probably the best I've ever managed to do in this particular case. In this game, I just managed to get like 7,000 points in one, and that was enough to get me 2 heroes. And then I had the bad luck to walk into a room where I was getting shot by 5 dudes at once, and it left me with 0 health. Which meant that I basically just completely wasted the entirety of that hero life. And that was immensely frustrating to me personally. But yes, admittedly, some of the fan wank that they've got going on with Battlefront 2 is absolutely glorious. The environments are very well detailed. The sounds are on point. The characters, their models, and their voices. I mean, it's obviously not like Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace Christopher Lee. You know, the massively famous ones. But I mean, like, they definitely got what's-his-face in to voice all the clones. I think it's Darth Maul's voice actor. I'd be lying if I said I knew for sure, but it sounds very much like him. The stand-in voices aren't particularly bad either. A little bit weird, but, you know, considering how well done all the models and stuff are, it's not that bad on the grand scheme. And there are just these little pieces that they've got going on that I really appreciate. Like, there's bloody Shadows of the Empire music in the menus sometimes, and you hear, like, Darth Maul's, the trumpets that introduce Darth Maul in the Phantom Menace, you hear them just, like, right before, like, in the movie, when the Duel of the Fates started up. You hear those little trumpets as the door opens every time you pick him, and it's glorious. Those little touches are legitimately glorious, and it's obvious someone was at least paying attention when they were putting this together. All the models are gorgeous. All of the maps are gorgeous, but honestly, I think they went a little bit too far with the maps to encourage authenticity, because as a result, all of the maps feel absolutely massive, which is not a big issue, but at the same time, it can be really hard to tell where you're supposed to go. Especially with the default HUD settings. There's a lot of settings you can change for HUD, where there are things like, you know, you can change how the HUD icons are laid out, you can change their transparency, you can change all the things about your stuff on your, you can change all the things about the stuff on your abilities and what have you. The one thing that I was really striving for, though, was a map, because there are so many situations in this game where I've gotten turned around, I've gotten stuck in a hallway, I've gotten into places where it's like, it's not obvious where the exit is, because there are parts of this game, like there'll be doors, or there'll be hallways or stuff, where you think, oh, that's the way I need to go, sometimes. And then you'll go down and be like, get back to the battlefield, or you'll be running against a door thinking, why doesn't this door open? There's a few situations like that, where it's just kind of directionless. And considering that the game doesn't have like an actual map of its own, it can be kind of hard to tell where you're going. Sure, you've got like the little things that'll tell you what direction they're in, but some of these maps can be absolutely maze-like. You'll find yourself wandering around in random hallways trying to find which way to go. There'll be doors all over the place, some of them will open, some of them won't. And it's just confusing, and even a few hours in, I'm still struggling against this. You've got the radar in the bottom left, but it doesn't really tell you much of anything about the way the maps are laid out, or where you're really meant to go. Even just a simple 2D map, like, some of these maps are pretty, like, some of these maps do have, like, above and below floors. They're not just, like, flat lanes, but a lot of these maps just are flat lanes. So, I don't know why they insist on not having a map to help, new players find their way around, but it just makes me feel directionless most of the time. As a result, it just kind of has as a result of all of this stuff on top of each other, like these big maps, these characters that all feel the same and don't really feel specialized until you at least get to the hero classes, in which a really bad situation might just result in you not being able to control them for more than 30 seconds. And the similar feeling troops, the massive maps, and the design of Supremacy as a mode, which is really just Conquest, just makes the main game not anywhere near as fun as it really should be. It just starts to feel like the same swing in a paddling pool level of depth that Star Wars Battlefront 1 had. Combine that with the fact you have to grind your ass off to get your characters anywhere near like anyone else's abilities, and it just it starts to feel frustrating after a while. Especially when you realize that they hid the best mode in the multiplayer mode options. So the game does have a few different kinds of modes, but here's the problem with the way you design UI in games like this. What you put on the very front of your menu is where most people are going to go. Trust me, I've had to do UI design before. This is something that you really need to take in mind. So as a result, Supremacy stands out as the main mode, and for the most part, outside of these little segments here where you have to fly up into ships and defend a place, and this is a really bad idea, by the way, I'll explain why in a minute. But basically, this is the main mode. This is going to be the mode that everyone sees when they log in. I don't know if it changes every now and again, depending on how the developers of the UI feel that week, but for how long I've been playing, it's basically been Supremacy all the time. There is also another option, which is like, it'll immediately put you into another mode, but it'll immediately put you into any mode, I should say. With that said, though, when I hit the play any mode option and it put me into a bloody game of Ewok Hunt, which was just an absolutely miserable 20-player horde defense mode, I didn't care for it. I did not care for it in the slightest. I'm just kicking my back of Supremacy. What I didn't know from looking at the menus until I actively went and started diving into the menus off on the other tabs is that there is a mode called Galactic Assault, which is definitely something that was around the older Battlefronts, but soon I haven't played the older Battlefronts. By the time I had a decent enough connection to play the old Battlefronts, we were already onto things like Halo 3. So, you know, give me a break on that one, please. So, when I saw Galactic Assault there, I thought, oh, that's interesting, it's another 40-player mode. And it was honestly more fun. Like, the problem with Supremacy is that it just goes on for too long. It takes too long for the meters to tick up, and on a map like Camino, where you get thrown up into the ship, it just kind of makes you go, oh, this shit again. Because it's either you just sit back and willingly accept the loss, or you manage to defend it for long enough, and then you go back down onto the planet again, the meters reset to 0, and you have to do the whole conquest thing again, which is just get into a spot, hold it, and hold enough spots in order to, get into a spot, hold it, and when you hold enough spots, you slowly start winning. But here's the problem with that. This game doesn't really have much in the way of combat mechanics. So, when you play this, and you end up, when you play this and you're on a team that's already losing, it's pretty much going to stay that way for the most part. I have had one or two relatively close matches where it's gone back and forth a bit, but when you are playing a game like the one I played here, where you just lose and you're just consistently losing throughout the entire match, it means that you're basically screwed. You're not going to be the one to win. There's no way for you to come back. Your teammates are just going to be incompetent enough that the other team will just roll over them, right? So when you end up going up into the ship like this, it's either you're going to lose or you're going to hold out, but then you're going to get put back on the ground, at which point it's just another decay, it's just another wait until you get put back on the ship, and then you're just going to lose again. That's pretty much the long and the short of it, more or less. And I don't understand why they let that sort of thing happen. Because it just makes the matches exceedingly long. Like this one here, which went for about 40 minutes. It's honestly too long for a game like this because the overall, like, not particularly great shooting, even when you're in a more specialized unit. Hell, I'm not even that big of a fan of the hero units like Darth Maul because, well, you've got a fucking lightsaber. You'd think that would be a one-shot kill on basically anything, but even like the weird little troops they've got wandering around that are AI controlled, that basically just stand there and look into a corner half the time until someone actively comes and attacks them. Yeah, even they don't die in one hit, and as a result, it makes your lightsaber just feel like a stick. And I hate games that make lightsabers feel like sticks. And it's just, It's frustrating because it just means they're not fun to play. It means that the base classes aren't particularly fun to play for particularly long. And when you've got to play a match for 45 minutes of the same similar kind of shooting, the same similar kind of heroes, and just not get a little bit of variety in there, it's just defend, attack, or defend, attack, defend. It just makes these matches incredibly boring, which makes Galactic Assault much more of a breath of fresh air. Because Galactic Assault has varying objectives. Galactic Assault has in-the-air vehicle combat. Galactic Assault has things like AT-ATs, AT-STs. It has things like snow speeders, X-Wings, TIE Fighters, X-Wings. Bloody, I don't want to turn the red letter media, but it's just got more to it. Even though the vehicles suck ass, I mean, I cannot figure out how they thought the vehicles were even remotely satisfying. It just goes to show how much Criterion have fallen since they designed the Burnout series. The vehicles are just not satisfying to fly at all. The controls are just odd. The precision of it is ridiculous. You can't easily attack anybody on the ground, which you think would be the point of at least a unit like the Y-Wing, for example. And they're just no fun to fly because the controls are just so weird that they're just really hard to get used to, and you have to be consistently spending points in order to get into Starfighters. So yeah, it's not great. But when you're riding around in like an AT-AT or an AT-ST, and those are like the only vehicles that have like the recoil that they feel like they should have in the entire game, and it feels monstrous to run around as an AT-AT or an AT-ST and just shoot the ever-loving bejesus out of everything you see. Even though it has more variety, it just, yeah. It still kind of suffers from the same problems though. Units feeling more similar than they should. Relatively subpar shooting that isn't satisfying for long enough. Big open maps which feel directionless. Not that much in the way of proper team play outside of just a lot of people going the officer class. It's just... It just gets boring. Same way that Battlefront did. It takes a little bit more time to get there. But not that much more. And the upgrade system, it's like... I just can't help but think to myself... We traded in shit for piss. Like, I know that's a terrible analogy, but... You gotta admit, being covered in piss is a lot better than being covered in shit. And that's kind of what these upgrade systems feel like. At least with, say, Call of Duty, you're consistently unlocking new weapons. You're consistently getting extra perks. You're consistently getting more stuff like that. In a game like this, where you barely get new weapons from time to time, all the skill cards are passives, and there's basically nothing to really shake up the gameplay, which isn't particularly great to begin with. This sort of upgrade system just feels like a drag. As a result... I don't enjoy it. It's a really... they designed this as a Skinner box, and when they took away the Skinner box, it just ends up feeling like a dull plate of gruel. A really fancily presented, and... It's a really fancily presented and really well done piece of gruel. Like, it's the sort of gruel you'd expect to be put out at a 4-star restaurant. But it's still gruel. It's got no flavor to it whatsoever. It's got no texture. It's got nothing that's really immensely enjoyable about it. If you're so bloody jaded and you just want something that's just something that you can idly blast away with for a couple of hours, it's really good for that. For those times when you really don't feel like focusing on anything else, I should say. But outside of that, if you even want to play it even remotely seriously because you like Star Wars and you want to feel like you're in a gigantic Star Wars battle, this just feels like a cluster most of the time, and it means I just don't enjoy it in the way I would hope to enjoy a gigantic Star Wars battle. And that's pretty much everything I've got to say about it. It's very well presented. It looks the part, no questions asked. It sounds the part, no questions asked. And there are a lot of, like, fan-wank details that I appreciate. Which would absolutely, like, you know, blow the mind of a casual Star Wars fan. I just want something deeper, though. I just want something that I can really sink my teeth into. I want something that I can feel like I'm improving at without having to spend hundreds of hours grinding away for skill cards. I want something that doesn't feel like they just converted it from Skinner boxes, because, you know what's weird? They replaced most of the unlockables that you could get via the loot boxes with a credits system, where you just earn money as you go through games, but the only thing that you can buy with them is skins. And I don't know what are skins, like voice lines, emotes, you know, those sorts of things, right? I don't know why they don't let you buy abilities for credits. It really seems like something you should be able to do, or even just like the different weapons for all of the characters to try and like, to let you diversify in them a bit faster, you know? I don't know why they don't do that. But no, they just insisted on having the grind be as long as possible. They didn't realise that the problem with the original loot box system wasn't that there were loot boxes to buy, it was that the grind was ridiculous. And they didn't bother to remove the grind. So it just feels like a grind at the end of the day. It would have been a grind with loot boxes if they didn't remove the loot boxes, but it's just a grind now. As I said before, we aren't being shit on anymore, but this rain is definitely still warmer than it should be. I don't know. Am I basically asking for the Unreal Tournament of Star Wars games? That basically already exists in the way of Jedi Academy. I still need to take a look at that. I was going to take a look at, like, one of the console ports when it came out, just as an excuse, but I never got around to it. Oh well. I'll just be repeating myself at this point, so I'm going to shut up and let you watch the rest of this footage. But, spoiler alert, we lose. Just FYI. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.